All right, let's talk comprehensive interview strategy. There's so much bad interview advice here, whether or not it's like interview hacks, interview tips, or interview preparation, and it's just so basic and standard. So what I want to do is actually give really meaningful advice as it relates to how to interview and how to think about your interview strategically. When we prepare for a job interview, what most of us usually do is the night before, sometimes the day of, we take a look, we research the company, and then we look at the interview panel just to understand who it is that's going to be speaking to us. But we don't actually take the time to make sure that the responses that we give demonstrate that we have a good understanding of the relationship between the role we're interviewing with and the person sitting across the table from us. Where I see candidates make a mistake time and time and time again is that they give the same stories no matter who it is that's interviewing them. Whereas in many cases, the manager is always going to be the one to make the decision, but the peer interviews or the stakeholder interviews can absolutely help influence it. So as a perfect example, one of the most primary elements of frustration is that salespeople have a tendency to sell something that R&D does not yet have ready. Or that by essentially honoring a promise that a salesperson has made will put a lot of strain on R&D to come up with features, products, or delivery of things that they're not ready to deliver. So if you're in a seller role and the person sitting across from you is R&D, that's going to be a really important thing for you to talk about. Second is to do some research on the people that you're going to be interviewing with. Now, I know certain companies won't even provide that, so obviously there's nothing much you can do, but there's a lot of fake job search and job interview advice that's like, oh, go to their LinkedIn profile and see what one of their hobbies are and then see if you can match it and bring it up. Managers are trained on that. Like it will look very, very obvious, but that doesn't mean you still can't get good information. For example, Netflix is a very, very well-known culture of open communication and feedback at all levels. So if you are interviewing with someone and one of their roles was at Netflix, that's something that they've probably been taught to value, especially as it relates to radical candor. So you can kind of aim your answers to demonstrate that you are also familiar with that and that you also embrace that methodology. Another example would be if you're meeting all the peers of a team and you look at each one and each one has been there for less than 6 months, but 3 of them seem to have come from the same company, then you know that there's a lot of team dynamic and chemistry that was brought together. So understanding how that particular company does whatever it is that you're interviewing for can be a critical way to really try to build a connection with the interviewer. Finally, one of the most critical pieces of advice that a lot of people give is to tell your best story, have your best story ready. And I agree with that to a point. But your best story can be made even better if you can reference something that the company or the team is facing. For example, when I was at EA, we went from the performance management culture with ratings to a coaching culture. I brought that up as one of my biggest hero stories to HR leaders. But when I talk to business leaders, while that might be an important element, what I want to do is actually demonstrate my knowledge of the business and what's happening with the industry. For example, at Spotify, one of the reasons I think I aced the interview was I was able to talk about a lot of the privacy concerns that Spotify was facing because I had just come from EA. Try this and you'll see a huge improvement.